I'm Colonel Ives, your friendly neighborhood senior intelligence observer, coach, and trainer, and today we're going to be talking about conducting rehearsals. As a part of our Bringing the Crucible to the Couch, this is the next one in the 8 best practices of the intelligence warfighting function at JRTC that you'll see here. Rehearsals are important at the individual, the team, the intelligence warfighting function, all the way up to the combined arms rehearsal for the BCT. But where do they really come from? ADP 5-0 says that it's all about practicing synchronization of ops at time and space necessary or critical to mission accomplishment. 6-0 talks about support rehearsals and how they're all about coordinating events and procedure drills. And then, of course, inside the troop leading procedures, which, if you think about it, that's really all the way down as far as you can go as far as who should be doing rehearsals. In the final step, it actually talks about overwatching rehearsals. So all of that is very important. And you'll notice in none of those does it say that you're intel. You're too important and too smart to be doing rehearsals. So just go ahead and trust that everything's going to work out fine. And yet a lot of teams do exactly that. In order to encapsulate what I'm talking about when I say that rehearsals are important for the individual all the way up through the car for the BCT success, we're going to use the IC Fires rehearsal because that's one of the best examples where organizations either succeed or struggle coming out of a rehearsal. Almost every rehearsal starts where the S2 gets up there and starts giving the lay of the AOAI. They start giving some sort of an update on the weather. They start talking about a little bit of terrain analysis, and they start going into the enemy courses of action, and they work their way through methodically. I will tell you that most of the times the S2s do fine with this one because they have to do the rehearsal based on what it is their commander really needs to understand and visualize the battlefield so that they can later decide and direct of what it is they're going to be doing. Where the S2s struggle is when they are completely disorganized in their thought process. So, for example, we get S2s that get up there, and after they've gone through, they've done the outline, they've talked generally about the terrain, then they start talking the enemy. And as they're walking through the battlefield, they want to go from enemy course of action 1 to enemy course of action 3 while I'm standing here, but let me go back here, this is course of action 2. This is where they start to separate. And there's no logical flow to all of it. One moment they're talking about air defense capabilities, and then the next moment they're talking about aviation capabilities, and they are just all over the map. They're talking about things by phase, but then they start talking about things by time. They're talking about NAIs, and then they're switching into exact grids. So just be solid, be smooth, and be organized. And I think the S2 portion could be a lot better if that portion is done that way. The next piece that starts to go awry is when the collection manager starts to talk. So all too often the collection manager busts out some sort of a collection matrix and then starts reading it verbatim. And what you end up getting is this monotone Charlie Brown sort of, the shadow is collecting from 08 to 2200, me. And nobody's listening. Even me, I'm supposed to be listening. And by the end of it, all I'm hearing is the Meow Mix song in my head. For those of you who don't know, you can look that up later. But I'm bored to tears. Everybody's bored to tears. Everybody has stopped listening as you go through the Shadow and then the J-Stars and the EMARs and the Grey Eagle. And all you're doing is reading it verbatim off of some sort of a chart that you probably could have just handed to people in the first place. Then as soon as the collection manager is done reading all of that, while somebody else is pointing at things while they're reading off of their book, then Fires gets up there and suddenly, miraculously, everything is destroyed. So truly, after many IC Fires rehearsals, myself and some of the Fires OCs will look at each other and say, okay, so something collects, a miracle occurs, and then Fires destroys everything. It's a miracle! Because the collection management, the S2, the Fires and targeting cell, they didn't actually come together to talk about the sensor to shooter plan. So they got the sensor, they got the shooter, but that 2, those 2 little letters right there in sensor to shooter, makes all the difference in how the rehearsal's got to go. A good intel team can combat this by actually rehearsing through the entire intel process for each high payoff target. Just as an example, you can do it by NAI, you can do it by phase, blocked version, whatever. But my recommendation is you look at it by high payoff target because it keeps you focused. The IC Fires rehearsal is all about what you want to kill. So the first thing is you start with that. What is it we want to kill? So the S2 walks out and says, I expect to find T-80s. It's usually a high payoff target for somebody out there, especially light infantry units at JRTC. They're really concerned about where those T-80s are going to be. So anyway, so you say, I expect to see T-80s as a part of the exploitation force located at NAIs 101 or 102 sometime between 01 and 0500 in the morning. Then the collection manager gets up and says, J-stars will be collecting between 02 and 0600, looking at these NAIs amongst many others, 101 or 102. And then the GMTI analyst then stands up and says, I'm the GMTI analyst. I'll be on station using movement because my skittle is broken, which is pretty common. I'll be on movement client. I'll be on duty from midnight to 06, therefore covering all of this one. If I see moving target indicators inside of those NAIs, I'll contact CUOPS and Fire Cell via chat. At which point then the S2 or the collection manager stands back up again and says, once we get the word that this has happened, we'll see whether or not the shadow is available to move over there and to confirm or deny whether or not these are actually T-80s versus BMPs. And then the Fire Cell says, once we have confirmation or we're good enough with the GMTI, then we'll go ahead and launch blah, 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 and they start talking about how they're going to kill them. Then the collection manager or the S2 stands back up again, or the GMTI analyst, and says, once they've launched whatever attack mechanism they're going to use, I will then watch for more moving target indicators in that area to confirm or deny the destruction. So what you've got here is that you've rehearsed not just what is it you want to kill, you've rehearsed how you want to collect and with what and why you want to collect against it. Now you've rehearsed also how you'll be watching, or who will be watching, really, the GMTI analyst in this case. And then also who will notify whom and how. So it's not just, yeah, once I see it, I'll call. It is, I will call via this method. Now, that sends a signal. That sends a signal to the S6. Oh, I should probably make sure that those systems are up and running. It sends a signal to the S2 NCOIC to, oh, maybe I shouldn't put the GMTI analyst on guard duty during that time frame. It sends a signal to all these people what they're supposed to be doing. So you've synchronized not just that, but now you're also synchronizing potential opportunity collects. So getting the shadow over there to do that, GMTI, FMB overlay. But then also you've rehearsed the assessment phase of all of this one. So you've done the entire intelligence process. Of course, I'm using my own words here to go after that high payoff target. And then you move right into the next high payoff target. We expect to find the enemy air defense at, and then you go through the whole process again of who's watching it, who's listening to it, who's looking for it, whatever it might be, and then how they're going to report it through the whole channels. But that's not the only thing that should be rehearsed. Don't stop at the IC Fires rehearsal in the car. Get the entire intel team together, because you don't just have to deal with high payoff targets. You don't have to deal with just these major things that are happening in the area. You're also concerned with a lot of NAIs that require a negative confirmation. I don't see anything in this NAI. Okay, if you don't see something there, doesn't that also tell you something else is happening? Well, let's go back to those IPB products where we talked about the event matrix. Inside the event matrix, it says, if it's enemy course of action 1, we expect to see this. If nothing happens, then it's probably not that enemy course of action. So you still need to rehearse that piece of the collection as well, all the way through the whole thing. But then there's also the mundane stuff that needs to be rehearsed. Maybe the S2 NCOIC or the assistant S2 or whoever's running your BICE operations need to be thinking about, have we rehearsed with HHC or with whomever is providing our fuel? When's that going to show up? Because you don't want the fuel to show up the same time you're in the heat of the battle. In the heat of the moment, you don't need a guy to show up and say, hey, who needs to fill up their fuel cans? And all of a sudden you got to send all your analysts outside to fuel them up. That needs to be rehearsed. Who's on guard duty when? I know I've covered that a couple of times, but please, I can't tell you how horrible it is to walk into something and go, okay, the J-Stars is flying. Where's your GMTI analyst? And for them to say, like, yeah, they're out on the perimeter right now. You want to pull them in? Well, I've got nobody else to send out there, because they haven't really thought their way through it. So rehearse all the aspects from the most difficult to the mundane. because it's the mundane that'll bite you in the backside. I guarantee it. Okay, not to draw this out any further than we need to, that is conducting rehearsals from my point of view at JRTC. Think about it all the way through. Be safe, be smart, go wash your hands.